Coming to you from the greatest city in the world, this is the #1 showbiz podcast. It's Talk for Two. Here's your host, Matt Bailey.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Talk for Two. On this 19th anniversary of 9/11, I am honored to welcome a multi-Academy Award-winning filmmaker whose work has retold real-world events, including the events at the World Trade Center. His films have entered the pop culture lexicon, transcending what it means for one person to be a movie director and writer. His new book, Chasing the Light, chronicles the making of Platoon, Midnight Express, Salvador, and Scarface. It is my honor to welcome Oliver Stone. Mr. Stone, Thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, that sounds good.
Well, before we get to this book, we'll get to Chasing the Light in a minute. I want to talk to you about today being 9/11, World Trade Center. That film has stayed with me. I saw it years ago, and I still remember it. What spoke to you about that story, of all the stories of that day, of telling that story of those real people during that event?
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. That film means a lot to me. Actually, it was for me both a great victory and also a kind of a sad defeat in a way I can explain, but in terms of my career. But it was a very difficult movie to make, and we undertook it. I undertook it with off the screenplay by Andrea Berlin, mm-hmm. And she wrote a very good original screenplay. It was too long. It was too many scenes in the going back and forth. So it was a hell of a rewrite. But we got it down to a sizable. I think it was 5-6 times we cut back and forth because there was a family story attached to those two men. All true story. We lived it with them. We went to New York and we got to know. I have a picture in my room with all the crew and the actors and the rescuers, the two men.
Yep.
Literally lived this story. John and Will, John Laughlin and Will Hermano lived this story. I think they were in that hole. I didn't do my research before this show. I didn't know you were going to talk about it, but so I'm not up to date on the details. They were in for, I believe, 36 to 48 hours.
Sure.
And they were in hell. I mean, they were the last, next to the last. I think they were number 17 and 18 pulled out of the hole.
Yeah.
In other words, there were 19 or 20 survivors of the whole thing, only. And they were almost the last people pulled out. And they were in terrible shape. John's hip was crushed. He's still in poor shape, and it hurt like hell. I mean, this thing has crippled his life, but he's got a great spirit, indomitable. So is Will. Will also had major injuries, but he's bounced back too. They were both with us the whole shoot. They were wonderful, wonderful spirits, and they infected the crew. Complicated movie to shoot because we had to create. It looks simpler than it is, but we have to build the debris.
Yeah.
We had to build an interior set and an exterior set, a gigantic exterior set in California. We built at the studio there in near Loyola Marymount. Gigantic outdoor set with beams, snarled, everything was, it took a major work from Jan Rolfs, who was our production designer. And then inside was even more complicated because we had to build these gnarly, twisted balls of steel and rubble, and we had to lift the actors into these things every day. In other words, if Nick Cage went into that hole, he was in for, unless he had to pee, which would take another 20 minutes to get him in and out. It was a full day's work.
Yeah.
Or half day's work and then lunch break. In other words, it's a hell of a number to shoot that, and I had to stand sideways, I was in very uncomfortable positions directing it, as was my DP, who was a wonderful English DP. Oh, you said I haven't researched this, I haven't caught up.
I'm sorry to catch you off guard. Today being the day, I wasn't going to actually air this today, but I thought, you know what? You directed one of the most important pieces retelling of this time in American history that I had to ask you and air it timely. I normally don't do this quick of a turnaround, so sorry for catching you off guard there. But the point of the matter is, it was a very important labor, and I thank you very much for doing it, because that film is just so important.
I just want to add one little thought. The last third of the movie is the rescue.
Yeah.
Once they're spotted by the character played by Michael Shannon, the rescuers come down, and that was as much of an effort to get them out as it was to survive. And it was very dangerous. And we shot with about 70 or 80 of the actual rescuers. Oh, wow. So those are the real men who went down there. Some of them reenacting it. All of them had been at the World Trade Center for those few days afterward, pulling people out, looking for people that didn't exist anymore. But it was really something to work in that crew. And then when it was the spirit was infectious. I thought it was the most accurate movie I probably ever shot in terms of detail by detail. And I took great pains to do it. It came out, and it did very well in terms of internationally. It made good money and all that. But, of course, there was the shadow of 9/11 over it, and a lot of people had very emotional reactions. Why are you making a movie about this? And, which I find strange, because 4 years had gone by. About 4 years had gone by, and I just thought it was time, In other words, not making too much out of it. Don't overreact. We had already gone to war against Afghanistan and now Iraq. It was insane. And I was, in a way, spiritually trying to convey that here is the real suffering that happened. Here's what happened to the people who were there. These guys saw it at the center of it. They were at ground zero, and don't overdo it. It was a tragedy, but a country is going hysterical with all these Patriot Act decisions and global war on terror, sending armies to foreign countries. It seemed nuts to me. So I was trying to ground the country. That was the point. Yeah. It wasn't received that way. It was received well, but many people were carping at it. And at me, there was a scene at the end, you remember, when Shannon says he's going to get his revenge for this, and by which he meant he was going to go to Iraq, which he did. The character went to Iraq for 2 tours or something, and he was carping at the film too. But the truth was, he said that, and I put the words in his mouth, but then it was interpreted as if I was saying we needed to get revenge. In other words, they politicized everything with me, and it spoiled the show. I mean, there was a lot of we didn't get any recognition for the work we did with the Academy or anything, which hurt, because so much effort was put in by the designers, everybody, and Nick Cage and Michael Pena, as well as Maria Bello and Maggie Gyllenhaal. I thought there was a bias against it, and I kind of felt that I was, at that point, cut off from the industry. They had declared me a pariah. So that was my reaction at the time, and it still was. It's still true.
Well, if I can, just as a fan of your work, say that I think over time, it's been now 14 years, I would hope that has fallen aside and the work just stands on its own. It's certainly very beautiful.
I do really think it was the truth is that whatchamacallit, United 93, which is a good film, but it's all speculation. We don't know what happened in that plane, right?
Right.
And that film, which is a recreation of what they think happened, was honored with a Best Picture nomination. And our film, which had taken painstaking details and done it the way it happened, was ignored. So it's sort of a strange reversal of what usually happens in this process.
Wow.
But that's the film, the whimsy of the film critic business.
Yeah. You talk about critics in the book, Chasing the Light. You mention them, sure. And you talk about Roger Ebert being the voice of Middle America, and then you talk about the New York Times. Do you personally put any stock in what the critics have to say, or do you look more towards the people who are paying the money and sitting down in those theaters?
A bit of both, but you have to realize that the critics with the media and the modern media have reached a loud echo. It's a loud echo chamber, and it carries. And it means, apparently it has more echo in Hollywood than it does really in the real world. But it does affect the outcome of a picture, no question, especially when you're have a picture that you have to sell in a way that's big because it's a big investment by Paramount.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of that going on, and it's gotten bigger and noisier. And I'll deal with it when I write about that, and not in this book, Chasing the Light, but which only goes up to 1986, 7. But I want to go back to that issue because the critics have destroyed many fine films, actually.
Yeah.
Although Roger Ebert was always my favorite because he was really he was the voice of reason, and he reacted as if, emotionally to things the way I do. Mm-hmm. And I like those kind of critics who are human beings and who are not living in some airy space where they are different from everybody else. Another thing critics love to do is they love, as I said in the book, they love to interpret the filmmaker. In other words, in my mind, that there should be no filter between filmmaker or film and audience. They should go directly to each other. And by putting the filter in and say, well, I know more than you do because I know this filmmaker and he's done this, and that sucks, and he's got his weakness here and his weak spot, blah, blah, blah. They put this kind of wall between us and them, which is a shame. But I'm glad you're saying what you're saying because you represent something else, the real world, the real audience, I think.
It's funny because my major in college, it's funny you say that because my major in college was film and screen studies, not film and filmmaking, film and screen studies, where you sit there and you read criticisms by somebody that was not involved in the movie making, trying to imbue meaning into what the director meant. What do you make of film theory in and of itself? Since you brought that up with criticism, is that one of those walls where people try to read too much into your...
I think it's a wall, I think critics, and also the money, promotion, the way it's promoted, the money you put into the promotion, all this kind of twists the innocence of the film. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame because every film should be judged not judged by the audience on its own merits. In other words, it doesn't matter if the filmmaker is somebody you don't like or somebody whose last film you hated. The whole point of it is that a film is unto itself. The director has only so much. He has also a script, he has actors, he has a production around him. So every film changes, and anybody who buys into the theory that a director is a god of some kind is nuts, because it doesn't work that way. And if you look at the best, most highly valued filmmakers, they make a lot of stinky films and in the course of a career, or films that you don't care for. So there's no through line on this thing. I mean, and we're talking everybody. There's not one exception to the rule.
I want to talk about the book, Chasing the Light. What's the light?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Chasing the Light. That was my life for most of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Why now? Why put pen to paper now? And I want to thank you, before I let you answer, for doing a book that isn't so much a memoir where you get the whole life, but you really focus in on that 10-year time period with those films. Why now, and what was the process like to dig back and to do that research?
Yeah, I wanted to write a memoir. This is not an autobiography. It's not covering factually your life. Mm-hmm. He did this, he did that. I've read those biographies. I wanted to give it a theme. It's written like a novel. I mean, it's attacked like a novel. Here's a young man who's at 30 years old, and it opens at 30 in New York, 1976, during the bicentennial. And he's got no hope, he's got nothing going for him. He's tried very hard. He's had a mixed history with success and failure. And he's come to a crossroads in his life at 30, as many people do at the age of 30, in those days anyway. And things happen on his 30th birthday. He rededicates himself to his work, partly because of his grandmother's death in France, because family means a lot to him. His mother died, and she was the mainstay of his life. And her death scene, I think, is very moving to me. He goes to Paris to see her lying out on a deathbed, and communicates with her in a very deep way. And it goes back in time to the parents, the 1950s, the 60s. It's like learning about your life by rethinking it. I mean, you get to a certain age. I'm 74 now, 72, 3 when I wrote it. So, it's a chance to really think about it, because when you're doing it living your life. It's going so fast sometimes, or you're so involved in it that you don't get the picture, the whole picture. And I think that's the beauty of reevaluation, or as Socrates said, know thyself, very important. And this was a very liberating experience. It gave me a lot of spiritual nourishment to do this. It's very necessary. And, for me, it's a man about me. I mean, it's a realization of a dream. He had a dream at 22, 3 to become a writer-director, and he had to pay a deep price for it. Many setbacks, failures, disappointments, and successes too. You learn from both success and failure. So finally, after 30, he begins to have breakthroughs. And of course, again, reversals too. So it deals with that 30 to 40 period in the last half of the book. And at 40, he's suddenly, out of the blue, making 2 films back to back, Salvador and Platoon, coming back from complete failure, being an outcast, not having achieved his dream in Hollywood, being living off in some potato barn in Long Island. He comes back with 2 films that hit, and 1-2 punch that puts him back on at the top of the world, because he wins the Oscar at 40 with Platoon. He impacts the world. The film goes around the world, makes money on top of it, gets good reviews, does everything you can dream of succeeding with a film. It happened then in 1986. On top of that, he gets a kiss. He gets the kiss of Elizabeth Taylor, who gives him the Oscar. Who's his favorite actress when he was young. So it's quite a dream that came true. It was enough, that it's enough. He achieved it. That's the end of that story.
Yeah.
And it's a good story.
It is, because...
So you see, I'm looking at it more as a novel, but it's true. And it's true to me anyway. That's the way I see it. So, but then what happens after 40 is there's going to be a lot of detours and a lot of twists and turns, but it's just another story.
Right. What I love about this book, and what I love about, and you talked about this in other interviews I was reading to prepare, is about hitting your stride, not till your 30s. You were really worried it was you were 30 and it hadn't happened for you. It seems like today, especially in this world of social media, if you haven't hit your stride by 25, you're out on your butt. What would you say? What would you say to the artist who is still trying to break through and feels like they're not going to succeed?
Well, I don't hold truck with that. I don't know why you say the age of 25. I think 25 is pretty young, and still you're learning a lot. I think there's no age limit on this thing. An artist is a person who's developing. He's experimenting with the world in an honest way, and this experiment goes on and on and on. But certainly, you'd like to see some markers of success. I can't judge social media. That's a strange phenomenon to me. I'm perhaps another generation, but it seems like there's too much opinions on social media, too much canceling and dissing of people. I don't like that aspect of it. It's cruel and it's rough. So you can't buy into that. You have to develop yourself. Some people develop slower than others. Some people don't have any success until they're in their 40s. They become novelists or playwrights, or less so in the technical trades, obviously, but still, architects sometimes take until their 40s, 50s to go. Frank Gehry, I know him. He became very successful about 60. There's no different times for everybody, and anybody who tells you that 25 is a bust, forget it. That's crazy. To the contrary, we're going to live longer because of medicine and health. So I don't put any time period on this, and I tell my children repeatedly not to think about it. I mean, you got to give them the realization they're going to live on for longer than you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I want to switch gears here and talk about your presidential films. And when you are looking at the life of a president and you're deciding to do these opuses, what are the touch points for you? And will you do something for Trump? Will you do a Trump movie, 6 years down the line? As
6 years, I'll be about 80.
Yeah.
We'll see about that. No, I don't know. Right now, I have no desire to make a feature film. It's just The last one was so difficult. Snowden movie was 2016.
Yeah.
Just with the research and all the difficulties of raising the money.
Mm-hmm.
It was made out of Europe. We shot most of it in Germany for the United States. And it just takes a lot out of you. I mean, right now I've been doing documentaries more and more since 2001. I've done 8 or 9 documentaries.
Yeah.
And they're very direct, and you get right to the point, and you say what you want to say. I spent 5 years working on Untold History of the United States with Peter Kuznick. I'm very proud of that. It's a visual documentary, 12 hours long.
Yeah.
Did you ever see it?
Yeah, it's on Netflix, of course.
Okay. Well, it's another view of of the American story since 1898. It's a big, ambitious project, and I think we succeeded. A lot of people think so too. Very progressive historians have seen it and praised it. Mainstream, less so. So in a way, I've sort of stepped away from the mainstream because the mainstream is increasingly looked bleak to me, and I'm not very pleased with what's going on in the country. I don't know that their thinking is right. I don't know that they've led us to the same place.
Right.
They've led us in a way to Trump. I mean, but Trump is not the worst president we had in my lifetime. It was certainly George Bush, who the son, who put America on a complete new magnetic compass course after 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Not only stealing the election, but on top of it, creating a mess after the 2001 story. With wars, global war on terror. It's just insane what's happened. Patriot Act surveillance. The country's took a real step backward, which it had no reason to. I mean, as you saw in World Trade Center, those 2 guys recovered. They went out back to a life. We had to get back to a life, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
We were sore losers. We kept bitching about it, and we got to get even, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work that way. Revenge doesn't work. So, sad. I mean, the mainstream's gone haywire is what I'm trying to say. And
Yeah.
I feel less in touch with America than ever.
Wow. What do you think will put you back in touch?
Oh, I mean, a change in direction. It'd be nice to have a candidate for office who really believed in peace and making friends in the world and having partners, which I don't see any sign of in this country. It seems like a neoconservative element has really a small element has locked into Washington, into the brain, and allied with liberal Democrats has somehow created this coalition for war, for constant aggression, as if we are threatened. There's no realization that America is totally rich and prosperous and has great geographic advantage over other nations as well as wealth. And it's all being dissipated in this madness of putting $1 trillion a year into a war budget.
Yeah.
Completely lost. Madness. Perspective, everything. What we need is a Roosevelt or a Kennedy. Kennedy saw it, and of course he was doing something about it when he got knocked off. But we need that. We need Roosevelts and Kennedys. And unfortunately, I had hopes for Obama, but he was ultimately a weak man who didn't want to confront this.
Yeah. I'm actually going to interrupt you there for a second because you talked about the Kennedy assassination. Doing JFK, what conclusion did you come to about the assassination? What is it? Just what are the conspiracies just ridiculous, or in your mind, with what you believe, is there something to maybe that there was more of it?
No, I think you should see the movie again. I mean, it's pretty hard hitting.
Yeah.
I mean, the facts, the way the Warren Commission came to these conclusions is a farce.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be, as I said at the time, I looked to it came from a power structure inside this Washington. I think people in the CIA, people with some military cooperation. There was a small group, but it did a job. It did a great job of cover up too.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated story, and I'm going back into it with this 4-hour documentary. I've been working on JFK,
Oh, wow.
Destiny Betrayed, with Jim DiEugenio, who's a modern researcher, done a lot more work into this assassination. Mm-hmm. We bring up all the facts that have come out in this investigation since 1991. When the movie came out, it launched the JFK Records Act out of Congress, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And they did it to, of course, bury the film and embarrass it, but it didn't work that way. It worked into They created an Assassination Records Review Board that existed. They didn't have much power, but they existed for 6-7 years. They had the right to. They couldn't investigate, but they had the right to review the records. It's complicated.
Yeah. And
what they did was review, and a lot of stuff got out, small stuff, but important, crucial stuff. And I'm going to bring that out in the film. It just seems, it cements the case that something happened, major something happened. The CIA, you have to look to them above all, and other people in government agencies. There seems to have been some malfunction, major malfunction.
Right. And I agree with you. I agree with you. Now, before I let you go, we only have a few minutes here left. There's two quick things I want to ask you about. And if this first one, I'll edit this out. If you don't want to answer this, I don't want to catch you off guard, but it's in the news that the Academy now has inclusivity requirements for Best Picture. What do you make of that? What do you make of that change? Good change or a slippery slope?
I don't like any kind of rules. I like as much freedom as possible. I'm not into this political correctness of the time. I think it's going to happen anyway. The more diverse we become as a nation, and the immigration is there. The old ways were going out anyway. It was never as awful as they say. There was misperceptions, but life tends to improve itself, like nature does. So I'm not wild about it. I don't know all the details and don't want to know, frankly.
And my last question for you, and this might seem a little trite, but I genuinely want to know, because, again, I was a film major, and I know a lot of my film major friends are going to listen to this in addition to our wider audience. To you, if you had to nail it down in a couple of paragraphs, what makes a great film?
I'm sorry, what makes a great
film?
Film?
Yeah.
A great what film?
A film, just a great film. What are to you, when you watch something and you say, that was a great film, what are the elements you look for?
That's very dramatic what you're saying. You don't ever get that. I mean, it's very rare. You think sometimes, oh, that was a great film. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes very enthusiastic, and then time goes by and you see it again. This is like America itself. It's a constant turmoil of experiment. Mm-hmm. Rethink things. I've seen so many films that I saw later, questioned, seen films that I did not like originally that I reevaluated years later, and I said, wow, I missed that. This is in the mind. It's subjective. This 10 best list is silly. The best of the best of this. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. You don't realize when you're going through life what the greatness of it is sometimes, because it's so ordinary. And the greatness is hiding behind the ordinary. So I would avoid that. I mean, I don't like those lists. I would really say I have seen, in my lifetime, more than 200, maybe 300 great films. And I keep finding the resource. I mean, I love in this. I've always looked at old films as stay in, watch a movie on a big screen is a pleasure. And I've discovered so many films from the 30s and the 40s, especially, and 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s, but 30s, just amazing stuff that was done by real people. In other words, we don't have to ever make another film. I think people could really, there's a treasure there, a renaissance of films that are available, treasures that are available to the mind. In other words, we can live in our libraries.
Yeah.
Reread the great books.
Well, I think we've all had all the time in the world to do that. Oliver Stone, this was beyond an honor. When your next JFK project comes out, when the documentary comes out, when your next volume comes out, please come back. This was an honor. Thank you so much, sir.
It's my pleasure.
That'll do it for us today. My thanks again to Oliver Stone. The book is Chasing the Light. Remember to subscribe to Talk for Two in iTunes, Stitcher, and on Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out talkfor2.com for more. Signing off, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there to keep talking for two.
You can hear more show business interviews with the stars at talkfor2.com.